Everyone, welcome back to the podcast. Welcome all new listeners and welcome back to those who have heard my content in the past. If you want to know what are the three things every CrossFit coach wants to know about their injured athlete, you have to tune into this episode. Before I go on to the podcast, what is new? What's better in life? Uh, I just had an amazing weekend with my family. And for those of you who know, I enjoy these weekends. They're good reset weekends. I went to Disneyland and a place called Great Wolf Lodge. I don't think they have a couple different places in the United States, but yeah, 2 days at Great Wolf Lodge and 1 day at Disney, and it was amazing. I'll tell you more about that, but it was good to just hang out with the kids. I didn't take my computer. My phone was away, so it was a fantastic time to kind of regroup with the troops, enjoy the time. And fun fact, we ended up. This is I'm very proud of this. If you've ever gone to Disneyland or any form of a theme park, it is my passion, absolute passion, to spend as little as possible. So for a full day, beyond tickets, hold on, beyond tickets in the actual park of Disneyland, I spent for a family of five less than $150 for the day, which is fantastic. So I'm very, very proud of myself and the family for doing that. Anyways, on to the podcast. What are we talking about? This one's going to be a great one. If you listen to my podcast, this is going to be a fantastic one because I'm very passionate about this. And I think that you need to know this because even if you don't do CrossFit, you don't do barbell sports, you need to know how to interact with these individuals, these passionate coaches. And this can be beyond CrossFit. I title it CrossFit coaches, but it can be anybody, any strength coach, personal trainer, fitness specialist, whoever you work with that they are involved in some form of training, and you need to learn how to communicate with these individuals. You just need to know what they want. They're not asking for much and they're easy to talk to. They want your help, but somebody's just not crossing that line. And this podcast is all about how do you cross that line to collaborate, to communicate, and figure out what is it they need. If you figure out what they need, you can easily deliver that. And I'm telling you right now, there are thousands of traditional orthopedic PTs who are not doing these three simple things. And it's so basic. And this podcast is about outlining those three things that you need to provide very simply, whether it's a phone call, a text, an email, anything it is. This will help you over the line and help you work with more barbell athletes, more people who want your help, and you just don't know that you're missing it because of these three little things. So that's what the podcast is about today on working with athletes. And one thing I'm going to talk about today that I think is very, very important is the thing I covered today in a talk with my team. We're going to talk about the concept of dopamine. And you're like, wait, why are we talking about CrossFit coaches and all this stuff and dopamine? I'm going to explain one simple thing. Whenever you're working with an athlete, right, whether that's community level, elite, pro, all right, when they are doing some form of exercise, right, we're all seeking just this like amazing feeling of endorphins, dopamine, feeling good about ourselves, right? And whether it's a patient, a friend of yours, or you yourself, you understand that you're like, when I exercise, I just want to feel good. I like that rush, right? And if you're sick and twisted like me, you like the dark zone, like the near black zone where you're like almost passing out. Like to me, that's like a fun place to get to. And I like riding that ridge. But in either case, we're all seeking that like that feeling when we work out. And when you're trying to help patients who have, back pain or neck pain or shoulder pain, whatever it is, you have to understand that's what they're seeking too, right? At the root level, they just want that fulfillment. They want that feeling. They want to be able to go to the gym and like have clarity, just get rid of all the problems that they have in their life for that 1 hour. It feels amazing. And they just forget about everything, right? At the deep root, that's what patients want when they exercise. Every one of us. And if you worked with anybody who does CrossFit or something high intensity or barbell, whatever it is, that's what they're seeking. And these individuals like doing it in the form of intensity. If you look at runners, they love a certain pace or miles or whatever it is. In CrossFit, it is Pretty much intensity. Like load is a big thing. If it was purely load, they would be powerlifting, right? Uh, for some reason, these individuals like intensity, so high load or moderate load, or whatever it is, with high intensity of pacing or running or jumping or sprinting or whatever it is. So once you understand that, now you're like, okay, I see how sick and twisted you are. You like that dark zone, you like that intensity. The question is, how do I keep you in the game? How do I keep you there? And sports PTs, whether you work in an orthopedic clinic or you work in a gym or whatever it is, whatever your framework is, your job and your mission is to get people back to getting this feeling back, right? Or modifying workouts so that they can still achieve that feeling despite their back pain, despite their neck pain. Well, there's a barrier in here where if you, as a sports PT or orthopedic PT, whatever you are, you're in the clinic, you specialize in managing people's pain and impairments and movement and blah, 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 all those things. The challenges you don't specialize in is programming for high intensity fitness. And my point in saying that is you're really good at providing solutions to modifications in movement, but those solutions don't get them the feeling that they're looking for. It gets them out of pain, yes, but they still want to be able to get that feeling, that dopamine release, that like they want to feel that. And the question is, what's the barrier between them feeling that and your skill set? You don't work in a gym coaching or training or telling people what to do inside a workout and modifying that. So that person, while they see you in the clinic and you've provided all the modifications and here's how you hinge at your hips and these are the 4 things that you need to do and the 27 exercises that are going to really fix your pain, they still have the problem of, well, what do I do in the gym? What am I allowed to do? Next comes the problem for the CrossFit coach. The CrossFit coach is at the gym. That injured person comes in, they walk in, they're like, hey, my back's been hurting. I've been seeing a PT. And the CrossFit coach says, great. What did they say you can do? They said, well, I have to hinge at my hips and I have to mobilize this and I have to stretch my hamstrings and move this way and mobilize this and do these things. Okay, great. What did they say you can do? They're like, well, actually, I don't, they actually didn't tell me what I can and can't do. Now the CrossFit coach is kind of stuck. They're now saying, okay, well, I'm just going to make my stuff up because I haven't heard from them. I don't know what your PT said. I don't even know what your injury is. So I'm going to modify based on what I'm seeing you. And if I have a really big class, now I'm a CrossFit coach who has a really big class and I can't tailor this to you. So that person then ends up in the corner doing minimal with minimal modifications. So what does that athlete do, that patient do? They stop going to the gym. Well, if the CrossFit coach couldn't do anything, the PT didn't provide what they can and can't do, the patient is stuck and they're like, well, maybe I shouldn't even go. I'll just take a couple weeks off. Well, what happens when you take a couple weeks off, right? You now have, there's less of a need or a want for the dopamine. You lose motivation, you lose the community. They stop going as regularly and they're like, actually, maybe I didn't like it as much. And they quit the gym. Now, there's a couple people losing in this whole equation. The CrossFit coach doesn't get to help that person. And they may have the skill set to be able to provide some modifications. They just need to know what they can and can't do. The gym owner loses because now that they lose a customer who could have been in their gym if they just had somebody tell them what they can and can't do. And all the while, the sports PT is like, I told them what to do. No, you didn't tell them what they can and can't do, and they can't what they are able to do at the gym and what modifications. And the sports PT is like, well, I didn't know that's what you wanted. And the CrossFit coaches, if you would have done that, it would have made my life easier. I could have kept them in the gym and then satisfied them. They would have been happy, releasing dopamine with some modifications. You would have had the PT would have been happy because they now have better outcomes. That person loves the PT. Now they're ranting and raving about the PT. CrossFit coach wins because they're like, they love providing modifications, they love helping people. And the gym owners like love that PT because they kept that person in business and now everyone's winning. The question then, what happens after that is that CrossFit coach and that gym owner now see the value of sports PT and they're like, wait a minute, how do we work with you more? Because we have 200 more people right behind that who are as injured, and we want to be able to find a good resource. So the question becomes, do you want to work with more motivated barbell athletes like CrossFitters, so much that you'll have a resource of, 20 to 50 motivated people who are injured and need modifications? And if that's you and you work in a clinic or a gym, you need to understand that there's simplicity in this whole process in providing the right resources to the right people at the right time. The problem with most sports PTs is they're failing to do these three things. That's the scenario behind everything. That's why I built this podcast. That's why I built my Management of the Barbell Athlete course, because there's a huge gap and it's all your fault, the sports PT. And I'll tell you why. All right. So I just outlined what the need is, right? CrossFit coach wants something, gym owner wants something, the patient, more importantly, wants something. The sports PT doesn't even know that that's the problem. So here's the three solutions. I wrote these down here. All right. Number one, if you are a sports PT and you're working with a CrossFit coach, the first thing that they want to know is they want to know, what's the timeline to return to full activity? What's the timeline to return to 100%? So for instance, somebody has shoulder pain and it's a fresh strain, right? And they were doing overhead lifting and they saw you the same week that they did it, right? The CrossFit coach or any strength coach or personal trainer, like I said, all they want to know is, what's the expected return so I can plan accordingly? Here's the problem that most sports PTs provide. Here's the answer. We're just going to take it, week by week and see how they do. So the strength coach or the personal trainer or the CrossFit coach is like, so like, you're telling me there's not a forecast? Like, you've never treated the shoulder before? Because that's what you're saying when you say, like, let's just take it week by week. What about the thousands of shoulders that you've done before? Haven't you developed like a general idea of how long it's going to take? You would think, after how many years you've been practicing, how many months, how many years, how many decades, whatever it is, how many shoulder patients have you had? I mean, 50 to 100 to 1,000. In that time, you've probably formulated some form of a traditional recovery process. Now, if you say, well, everybody's different and I'm personalized one-on-one, 60 minutes with a PT, whatever, that has nothing to do with your ability to forecast how good somebody is going to recover coming to you with the very similar symptoms. We want to make it so individualized that we make it so complicated that no person heals the same. Yes, they all heal the same in a general timeline within 2 weeks. So the question becomes, why can't you provide a timeline to return to full sport with a given symptomology and a differential diagnosis in your clinic? Where's the gap? Just your confidence with forecasting and projecting. That's all it is. You can't say, unless you're a student coming out as your first person you've ever seen like this, great, I get that. But you still know soft tissue healing. You can still project off of traditional healing timelines. So where's the gap? Your confidence in doing that. Here's what they actually want. They want a timeline to full recovery. Sports PTs don't want to commit to something because they don't want to be wrong. And so they say, let me go week by week. Or they go, you know what, it's going to take 12 weeks. Let me just throw this way out there so that I'm not wrong. Here's what they don't want. They don't want something so far-fetched that they're going to be like, I don't even know if I want to work with you. Or they don't want week by week because they're like, that really doesn't help them. All they want is a general idea. You know what they really want? It's going to take 6 to 8 weeks. That's it. That's all you have to say. Or 4 to 6, whatever your confidence is. That's reasonable soft tissue healing. Really, it's 6 weeks. So they want a projected return to sport so that they can say, oh, that's perfect. So then I know how long I'm modifying for. And then you can have week-to-week updates. But you have to commit to something. What's the projected timeline? Out of all the people you've worked with, you can't tell me how long it's going to take? 6 weeks. Great. That's all I needed. Timeline to full activity. That's number one. And number two is providing the CrossFit coach or fitness professional with a list of green, yellow, and red lights. Now that you've shared what the timeline is to be, or the projected timeline of healing, right? We talked about that 6 weeks. Now they want to know, what can the athlete do in the class? What can't they do? And what are the limitations within that? Now, you don't have to be in a CrossFit gym or in a high intensity gym or done Olympic lifting or powerlifting in your life. What you need to do is, what's the general framework that you think is going to hurt this individual? Now, here's where sports PTs go wrong. They say no overhead lifting. CrossFit coaches are like nothing, like strict pull-ups. Like, I mean, they can't do anything hanging from a bar. They can't do any vertical pressing. Like, what is overhead movement talk about? And the only reason the sports PCT is doing that, because they don't feel confident. They don't know what they're saying. They don't know what the sport is. They're like, I'll just shut you down from the top up. And the CrossFit coach is like, if you've ever done any form of lifting, you know I can still do so much. It's just, what within that can I do? Can I do overhead pressing? Can I do overhead pulling? Can I do horizontal pushing? Can I do horizontal pressing? So it comes down to providing specific modifications. It doesn't have to be a whole workout. They just need to know what's the direction they can't do. So is it vertical, pushing, pressing? Is it horizontal? Is it any form of, is it a load-based problem? So like, can I go over a certain percent, or is it a general movement? Once you know that, you're like, okay, great. No overhead pressing beyond 50% for the next 2 weeks. Oh, got it. I can modify that all day. Perfect. It's a lower body. Great. Is it overhead or lower body pushing and pulling? Is it load-based? What am I modifying? Once the CrossFit coach knows, oh, got it, I know my red lights. They can't do that. Great. What can they do? Oh, I see. No vertical pressing, but they can do horizontal pushing and pressing. They can do all forms of core. They can do all forms of leg. Perfect. Can they row? Yeah, that's horizontal. That's horizontal pulling. Got it. So once you do that, they can program around that. But all they need to know is, what is the absolute red light? What are my green lights? And they'll figure out everything in between. So what that allows that athlete or that patient to do is continue to participate in, like, seek that dopamine, seek that feeling. And that's when they're happy. They're not happy about exercises. They're happy about being able to go to the gym. And as a sports PT, you forget about that sometimes. Even you're the person who enjoys getting the dopamine rush. You're the person who enjoys going to the gym. You feel that same euphoria, like that feeling. You forget that the patient wants that. Because why? Because they're in pain. And so you are a pain specialist. You're like, let me hook you up with the best 27 exercises for your hip pain, for your back pain. The question you should be solving is, how do we keep you in the gym? What is it that you need to know? What is it that I need to tell your CrossFit coach, or you can deliver? If I wrote this down, that way you don't have a HIPAA compliant, blah, blah, blah. That's always the next barrier. Like, well, I don't want to do HIPAA. No, listen, I know what you're doing is, you don't want to have a phone call and have an awkward conversation with somebody you don't know. How about this? How about you just write it down and make the path of least resistance? Write it down on a whiteboard or on a piece of paper, or have the patient do this, so that we can take your whole self out of the equation and have them write down the 10 things that you want them to do or can't do inside the gym. Then they can take that same pad of the notepad or the paper or the whiteboard or picture, whatever it is, bring it to the CrossFit coach and be like, here's what my PT said. They said I can't do any vertical pressing. I can yes to horizontal pushing and pulling, yes to any form of core, and then yes to any lower body. Can you help me with that? CrossFit coach is like, I can work around that. Love that PT. Tell me who the person is. Once you give the CrossFit coach or the personal trainer or the fitness specialist an idea of what the timeline is, 6 weeks, got it. Then you talk about green, yellow, and red lights. Perfect. Now you've solved most of their problems. That, like, now this patient like loves you because you gave them the tools, the resources that they needed to communicate with the person who could help them on the next stage, which was keep giving them or allowing them to create the environment for dopamine, for the euphoria. And that gym owner is like, Gosh, I love this sports PT because they're keeping our customers, the person that's most important, the patient, excited, passionate about what they want to do. Love that. So what's the third part? What's the third thing every CrossFit coach wants to know about an injured athlete? They want consistent communication after that. Like every visit, why don't you just, whatever you're verbalizing to the patient, why don't you just double down and write it down so that you no longer have to do any form of, if you don't want to call, email, or text or somebody else in your local environment, you don't have the time, maybe see 30 people a day, whatever it is, or you just don't have the time, make it so that way you're doubling down and making things reproducible and scalable, meaning you can then have this person take that same information that's written down or on a piece of paper or photographed or whatever it is to the CrossFit coach. And then what I'll have patients do is I'll have them use their own phone. Like, so I say I like whiteboards. I think they're great for like visual and everything else. So I always have a whiteboard next to me. I'll write it down. I'll have that patient take a picture of it. And depending if they have an iPhone or Android or whatever it is, I have them create either a shared folder or a personal folder with Rehab. They label it Rehab or PT or whatever, and they'll just take pictures of all the recommended exercises, all the recommendations of the whiteboards, so that they can take that to their coach and have that as a resource for them to be able to look at and review, and then they can see the progress. So every time I take a picture of like, hey, everything we talked about, they now have 20 different pictures or 12 sessions or 12 pictures that they can show their CrossFit coach every single week or their fitness specialist. And now the fitness specialist like, oh my gosh, this is too easy. I can keep going. But here's where a lot of PTs go wrong. They make it this big challenge. They're like, oh, I got to call this person. I don't have the time and blah, blah, blah. In reality, I think it's a lot of times we fear that conversation. We don't want to have a puffing the chest conversation where like, oh, I'm the captain now. I'm taking care of their pain. And the fitness specialist like, well, I know a couple exercises. I've taken a couple courses. I can mobilize them. I can manage back pain. Who gives a crap? Take that out of the equation. Give the resource to the patient. The patient then just takes it over to them. They implement, and we're all good. Most people have a challenge with, they think that the CrossFit coach or the whatever they have a bad reputation, that they want to do everything themselves, or they don't know what they're doing. Who cares? You're the medical provider. You are the captain. You're the coach. You're the person who's taking lead on this. Your job is not to confront anybody. Your job is to make the path seamless for the patient. Take yourself and your ego out of it. They don't deserve that. You know who loses with big egos? The patient. You know who loses with big egos? Sports PTs who get a bad reputation for poor communication, poor collaboration, not wanting to work in your local environment with people who want your help. They want to work with you. Guess what? You have two people. Here's the irony, because I work with a lot of coaches and fitness professionals, and this is what they all tell me. Every single one of them tells me, I just wish they reached out to me. I just wished they reached out to me. And then the PT can be like, I wish they reached out to me. No, you're the captain. You're the person who the patient is looking to for the education and advice. Your job is make the path seamless for the patient. So what does that involve? Communicating with those who are involved. What's the difference between that and a soccer coach? It's the same thing, but you're more likely to talk to a soccer coach than you are a personal trainer. Why? What's the difference? They're still coaching a specialty. It's your job. Your job is to communicate with the coach. And if they're a youth athlete, the parent. That is your role, because without them, you're fighting an uphill battle you will never win. Why? Because they spend more time with your patient than you do. That means they have the potential to add more stress, more undue stress, or a more seamless recovery path, meaning removing the stress, removing the possibility for irritation. They have more of an influence than you do. You create the path, you create the roadmap, you create the journey. Their support system while they're injured is to perfect. I won't irritate it. We'll work on lower body. We'll work on upper body. We'll work on core. We'll decrease the load. Your job is to create the plan, create the playbook so that that patient is ready to rock and roll. But it's important for you to know, out of all the things I can do, what is a CrossFit coach, Olympic lifting coach, or a personal trainer, what do they want to know? These three things: the path to the recovery, the timeline, number one; green, yellow, and red lights, number two; and consistent communication, meaning weekly. But like, I don't have the time, then have the patient write things down so they can share it with them. Or you write it down, the patient takes a picture of it, they can show it to them. Or even better, you email them. You email the patient and they can forward that information. You call the strength coach, obviously with the patient's permission and everything else. In either case, you're here to facilitate a path to better recovery. And that includes your responsibility is to communicate with those who have more time to create either undue stress or relieve the stress, because you only see a patient max 2 hours a week, maybe 3 hours, right? Maybe you're on a 3 times a week or 2 times a week or 1, right? If you only see them 1 hour a week, maybe max 2 hours a week, but that personal trainer or CrossFit coach sees them 3 to 5 hours, they win. They have potential to do more damage or support the patient to not have as much stress, to allow them to create that dopamine response that the patient wants. So your role as a sports PT is not to relieve pain. It's to help an athlete achieve that dopamine euphoria, allow them to continue doing the things they love. So if you focus on pain relief, you're doing the bare minimum. Now, if you rely on your focus is on helping an athlete get rid of that, achieve that dopamine, release it. Now your eyes are on the right path. If you're on pain reduction, you're just helping them get around the daily things, modify a couple things, and hoping that they go to the gym and they figure it out on their own. Guess what? They'll never figure it out on their own. They didn't spend years studying the human body and understanding fitness guidelines. Just because they're an adult, maybe they're professional, they're smart, intelligent, they get it, doesn't mean that they know how to get back to the gym. That is your responsibility. And if you can't provide these guidelines, you definitely know they're not going to be successful in the gym. Because if they don't know it and you don't know it, what's happening to those outcomes? They're not getting anywhere. And it's your fault. Your job, and I just talked to my team about this. There's a skill set gap inside every sports PT with their patients. Meaning, if you could only manage pain, then that's all people are going to see you for. But if you can manage pain and the ability for them to enjoy dopamine when they're injured, going back to CrossFit, that's a skill set gap right there. That's another skill, communicating and collaborating with fitness professionals. That's a skill. So if you are able to relieve pain and get them back into the gym and continue to enjoy dopamine release, that's another skill. So now when a patient comes in, you can get them out of pain and get them in the gym. That's another skill gap, meaning you can now provide another skill on top of everything you do. Here's another one. What if that patient needs help with mechanics and barbell mechanics, and that's why they're in pain? Yeah, you can provide the exercise with better hinging and all these other things. That's a skill. You can help them with that. Next, you got them back to the gym. You provide them modifications. That's a skill. You can help with that. Now, if you can't help them with barbell mechanics to find the root source, then you can't create another skill gap. Your skill is capped. Your ability to help them is capped. But now if you can understand mechanics, now you have another skill gap to be able to help them with. Now, if you can help them with nutrition and recovery processes, that's another skill gap you can help them with. Now, as athletes come in, yeah, they come to see you with pain, but that's all they come to see you for. Why? Because that's all you can deliver. And if you're looking for like, well, how do I help athletes? How do I get more on my schedule? The problem is stop being a pain specialist. Stop being a just like a knee pain 27 exercise type of a PT. How about you develop better skills so you can continue developing those skills in those athletes? Athletes that come see you don't say, "Hey, I just wish I found a PT who can help me with everything that I need inside my fitness routine." That's what they want, but they don't come asking for that. Why? Because it needs to be developed. Because sports PTs don't have that skill. So why do people leave us? Because you have that talent gap. You can't provide anything more than pain management. And barbell athletes and CrossFit coaches want a clinician to be able to help support them to be able to get back in the gym and beyond and work with mechanics and work on their recovery strategies and do these things. Why? Because a CrossFit coach loves those individuals because they're performing at a higher level in those gyms. The gym owner loves that. The patient is thriving. But you know why patients don't maximize potential? Because the PTs they see have a skill gap. They have a talent gap and they have a talent cap. They don't know how to take that athlete to the next level. How do you do that? You offer it and let them know. You ready for this? I have knee pain. Sounds good. When do you have knee pain? When I go to the gym. Let's take a look at that. When do you develop that? Well, I have pain when I do CrossFit. Sounds good. Who's your CrossFit coach? Who do you work with? Sounds good. I'll take a look at it and I'll give them some information. All right. Now tell me, when is it that you're developing pain? Well, it's every time that I have a full clean or full snatch, whatever it is. Got it. It's probably because you have some mechanics and irritation and inside your knee. How about we look at your actual barbell path and look at when you're developing these things? For now, I'm going to provide modifications that you don't go all the way down. You're going to stop at a power position. You're not going to go beyond 90 degrees of knee flexion, and you're going to stop at squatting at a box. That's going to relieve your pain temporarily and allow you to go to the gym and enjoy that. I'm going to communicate that with a CrossFit coach. Inside that, I'm going to give you one or two additional exercises to help relieve the pain inside this. But otherwise, you can still squat 2 times a week. You can train everything else. You just can't go below 90 degrees. Everything else is fair game. They're like, oh my gosh, that's amazing. Sounds good. Hey, listen, before you develop all this, how often were you training? 7 days a week? Gotcha. How often or like how many hours of sleep do you get? 6. Got it. How's your nutrition? Oh, it's hit or miss. Sometimes I don't eat. I got it. Listen, your knee pain, I get it, is one thing. But I think that you're overstressing your symptoms. You probably, yes, you have a knee valgus and blah blah blah, calf is tight, hamstring is tight, your tibial rotation is up, whatever it is that we do nowadays. But when in reality is there was too much stress being applied to that knee. It wasn't just the mechanical impairments. They're probably overtraining, doing too much. The CrossFit coach just needed a little help and support of like, hey, I'd monitor this, if they're doing these things, here's your modifications, the load management, here's what I would do. I would back them off to 5 days a week, work with them on their sleep and nutrition, work on the mechanics and barbell path. But if I just worked on the exercise and pain management, I would have never solved the root of the problem. And if you're a PT who's stuck inside an impairment-based model, you're missing 90% of the person's problem. And if you're really wanting to work with higher elite level athletes, you'll never get there with having a talent cap at just pain management. Understanding that there's mechanical challenges, biomechanical challenges that you have to be able to work through, recovery strategies to improve their ability to recover and perform at a higher level all the time. Their nutrition, sleep, and everything else behind the scenes to be able to refuel and not have the stress to that injured area. And the more skills you develop over time, the more athletes you can see, the bigger that talent gap gets there. And believe me, athletes follow PTs who have more talent, meaning they have more tools in their toolbox, more skills, because they can offer more. If you can't offer more, it's called discharge. For those of you who don't know, I despise the word discharge. Why? Because there's always something you can offer the people you serve. Now, discharge from pain management sounds great, but there's also wellness programs and everything that you can be doing so that that athlete just doesn't come back for the same problems and have to rely on you. And the irony of all this is that we facilitate independence and not dependence and blah blah blah. The reality is that these people, after 6 weeks of injured shoulders, don't get it. They haven't spent 3 years learning their shoulders and how to manage their body. It's your job. Now you can take them on and say, "Hey, listen, we're gonna work on biomechanics. We're gonna work on your strengthening. We're gonna develop a strength program so you can avoid this down the line." But it requires that you commit to 6 additional weeks of strengthening, 6 weeks of biomechanics and progression into these things, develop a strength program, whatever it is inside that you whatever your specialty is, whether that's barbell athletes or anybody else. I'm telling you that if you rely on impairment-based model, pain management, discharge only, it's because you have a talent cap. As sports PTs, our job is to grow more and more skills so we can have a talent gap and create and continue to increase that gap. So that athletes and patients can continue to see us, we can offer more services, we can support them. But without that gap, there's no way. You're always gonna be capping at discharge in 4 to 6 visits, and that person is always gonna have that irritation. There's no way that they're independent with it. They haven't studied what you have for 3 years and obsessed about it. They just know enough to get by. And if you put them out in the wild again and you put them back into training on their own, and that they're working with that CrossFit coach wants support. They need the support. They can't manage 200 athletes by themselves. And that's why they're looking to partner with sports PTs. And that's the skill set I want to be able to give to you guys. So that way, when you're working with these athletes, I titled it CrossFit, but it's anybody inside, barbell mechanics and Olympic lifting, powerlifting, CrossFit, all these individuals, that's what they're looking for. I've worked with these people for 10 to 15 years now. And it's what they're looking for. It's what they want. They always want to collaborate. Nobody knows it all. All they want to do is share. If you're a sports PT who's always been wanting to do it, just know that just reach out. It's the simplest thing you can do, but know what they want. Those 3 things. Number one, the timeline to recover. Number two, green, yellow, and red lights. And number three is just consistent communication. You do that, you'll have a list of awesome barbell athletes on your schedule, and you'll be thriving with a full schedule of motivated people. That's essentially what you're trying to do. Is you just want more motivated people on your schedule. Who's motivated? The people who won't seek out high levels of dopamine, meaning triathletes and active individuals. If you have non-dopamine seekers, that's what your schedule is. And that's probably where your talent is. That's where you're capping, is that you're not helping people seek out more dopamine, and you have unmotivated patients in your schedule. And until you hit a point where you're like, that's what I want, then you're gonna stay there. And I'm here to help be able to get you over that edge and be able to be successful. And that's why I created my management of the barbell athlete. Truth behind it all, I love working with these individuals, and I've developed a system, a framework, communication tools, strategies to be able to do this. And I want to be able to share it with the planet. They're successful. There's so many CrossFit gyms, so many barbell athletes, there's so many Olympic lifters, so many power lifters nowadays. Just Instagram or YouTube, just Google any of these things. These people are passionate. They love what they do, just like you, and they're looking for a particular individual. And I think that's important for you to know what they're looking for, who they're looking for, and then who do they work with that you can partner with. And that's CrossFit coaches or Olympic lifting coaches, powerlifting coaches. And these people want to be able to collaborate. It's important for you to know. And inside my management of the barbell athlete course, this is what I'm delivering. For the first year, depending on when you're listening to this, is the first year I'm doing it. I'm not sure I'll do it again, but I'm opening up this course to all fitness and healthcare professionals. This is not just sports PTs. This is the first year I'm doing this. It's just per like your request and popular demand. People have been asking, like, listen, I think we can get some really good collaboration if we open it up to strength coaches and personal trainers and athletic trainers, massage therapists, all these people who are seeing the same individuals. Like, how do you create a community? That's what I'm doing here. That's what I'm going to do inside this management of the barbell athlete course. For those of you listening in 2023, my course is October 28th, 29th. It's virtual and or live in person in San Diego, whatever your preference is. But it's really focused on how do you work with barbell athletes, and then how do you work with the people who are already working with them, and share a community of people who don't have the egos and don't care about those things and really is all about the patient. It's focused on that person. How do we keep them seeking more and more dopamine? That's really what it comes down to, not getting out of pain, but exercising and really thriving. And so that's the latest update. So if that's for you, interested in my course, register drchrisgarcia.com/barbell. I'd love to see you in there. And just the next time, if when you register, let me know. Like I heard in the podcast, and this got me fired up, and I want to be able to work with more and more fitness professionals. And or if you're a fitness professional listening to this, and you're like, hey, listen, I didn't know that was opportunity. Sign up, register, tell me, let me know. I'm excited to see you inside this course. I'll share everything I've ever learned about barbell athletes and what I do in my community, my system, my foundation. I'll share it all. So if that's for you, register. All right. For the rest of you, it's been awesome to have you on this podcast. As I mentioned, it was going to be a fiery one. I love this stuff. I love working with athletes. I love barbell athletes. They're super technical. They love an upfront, good communicator of a sports PT. And if that's you, you're going to thrive and do well with them. If that's not you, you got to fix that, increase your talent gap, develop the skill set. And that's what I want to be able to help you do inside the course. So I'm excited to see you next month. I'm recording this in September. So yeah, I'll see you guys next month. And then I hope you guys are thriving and living life and enjoying every minute of it. I'll see you guys on the next episode. Take care.